I read a Bloomberg article this weekend that stopped me cold, and I want to tell you about it today because it is about something much bigger than the article itself. The article was about Kevin Hart's media company. Hold on now. Stay with me here. Stay with me. Because this is not really a story about Kevin Hart. This is a story about what we do when someone we trust points at something and says, that right there is what success looks like. And we believe them. Because why wouldn't we, right? Let me tell you what the article says. Kevin Hart built a media company called Heartbeat. At its peak, that company was valued at $650 million. $650 million. They had offices in New York, offices in Atlanta, and a 40,000 square foot space in West Hollywood that used to belong to Oprah Winfrey. Let that sit for a second. Oprah's old office, and inside that office, there was world-class art collection, paintings from South African artists, sculptures made of computer keyboard keys, a portrait of Kobe Bryant right outside the podcast studio. This was not a small operation. This was a business that had deals with Netflix, that had deal with Sirius XM, Audible, and also major advertisers. So this was a business that Kevin Hart built because he watched his celebrity friends, Reese Witherspoon, LeBron James, build media empires worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And he believed he could be the next one. From the outside, this looked like everything. This looked like the blueprint. This looked like proof that if you are talented enough, and if you are bold enough and connected enough, you can build something massive. And then Bloomberg published this article. And what was on the inside, it looked nothing like what was on the outside. They had layoffs. Nearly a quarter of the whole company gone right before Thanksgiving. Executives running their own side business using company employees and company resources. The CEO left. Then the CFO left. Then the chief content officer left. Even Kevin Hart himself, the founder, the name who's on the building, he went weeks and sometimes months without visiting the office at all. Staff meetings canceled. New projects, they were pitched but never produced. A lot of lawsuits. A company that, according to its own employees, was in the beginning of the end. And here is the line from the article that stayed with me. Kevin Hart's own email to his staff said the company had been, and I am paraphrasing here, too dependent on him. Too dependent on the man whose name was on the building. So the $650 million company in Oprah's old office, with the art collection and the Netflix deals, a complete mess on the inside. Now, here's why I'm telling you this. Because a few months ago, someone that I trusted and admired was holding this Kevin Hart business as something to admire because she heard Kevin Hart talk in the Diary of a CEO podcast. So this was proof of what's possible. It was evidence that certain people, they just know how to build and how to win. And at the time, I didn't question it at all, because when someone is operating at that level, when they have access to information, and they have access to connections and a track record that looks absolutely impressive. You just assume that they see things that you don't. And you assume that their read of a situation is better than yours because they have more. They have more followers, they're making more money, they have more connections, they have more visibility. And somehow, I feel that we've decided that more of those things equals better judgment. And then Bloomberg published this article. And I sat with it for a while because what it was really teaching me, it had nothing to do with Kevin Hart. I want to name something that I think most of us do and very few of us we talk about. We outsource our judgment, especially to people who look successful. And I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that successful people, they have nothing to teach us. Some of them do. But there is a difference between learning from someone and handing them your judgment. Learning from someone means you take what applies to you and you leave what doesn't. You eat the meat, leave the bone. And then you keep your own read of the situation active. But handing someone your judgment, it means that you stop trusting your own gut, your own read. You tell yourself that they know better, they see more, they understand things that you don't. And anything that comes from your own gut, any doubt, any hesitation, any, you know what, this doesn't feel right, it gets explained away. Because who are you to question someone at that level? I did this, and I want to be honest about it. I have 18 years of entrepreneurship. I have built systems and strategies for clients at multiple levels. I know how online business works, and I still did this. I still handed my judgment to someone whose platform was bigger than mine. And then I told myself that their read of things, their gut feeling of things, it was more valid than my own. Even when my gut was saying something else, even when I was noticing things that didn't add up, I explained it away because they had more followers, because they are making more money than me, because they have a bigger stage. And I told myself that meant that they saw further than I could. Here's what the Bloomberg article taught me. And this is the thing that I also want you to sit with. What looks like success from the outside is not always what is happening on the inside. The company in Oprah's old building with the world-class art collection and the $650 million valuation, it was falling apart inside. The people presenting it to the world as something brilliant, they did not know what was happening inside. Or maybe they didn't look close enough. Or maybe the outside was just really well packaged. And this is true beyond celebrity businesses. It is also true about the influencers whose life looked perfect on Instagram. It is true about the coach with the very impressive client list. It is true about the colleague at work who seemed to have it all figured out. It is true about the friend whose marriage looks like a fairy tale from the outside. Outside and inside are not always the same thing. And we keep making decisions based on the outside, based on what we see happening outside, without ever asking about the inside. Here's what I want to say about your gut. Your gut feeling is data. It is not a feeling that needs to be explained away. It is not an emotion that you need to get over. It is actual information collected over the course of your entire life. It is decades of experience, decades of watching people decades of figuring out things, decades of figuring out what is real and what looks like performance. And the woman sitting across from you with the big following and the impressive income and the well-packaged brand, she does not have more data than you. She has different data. And different is not the same as better. And I want you to think about the last time that you talked yourself out of something that you felt in your gut, something that your gut said, and you told your gut to be quiet because someone who looked more successful than you was telling you something different. Was your gut wrong, or were you just trained to trust the person with the bigger number over the person with 50 years of lived experience? Because here's the thing about 50 years old. By the time you get 50 years old, you have been reading rooms for a very long time. You have been figuring people out because you're watching what they do versus what they say. And you're noticing also when something is off. You're feeling it before you can even explain it. And that is not nothing. That is actually one of the most valuable tools that you have. But somehow we keep handing it over to people with prettier packaging. So let me tell you what I think the alternative looks like. I'm not saying don't learn from people. I'm not saying don't invest in yourself. I'm also not saying that people with more experience, they have absolutely nothing to offer. What I'm saying is this: keep your read active, keep your gut feeling active. When someone you respect points at something and says, that's the blueprint, take time to look for yourself. Ask questions. Do your own research. Pay attention to what they do versus what they say. Because Bloomberg is going to publish the inside story eventually. It always does. And when it does, I want you to have been the person who already had doubts. And you listened to them. Not the person who ignored her gut because someone who is louder told her to. And the second thing, when your gut says something, when it gets quiet and then you feel something change, stop talking yourself out of it. Not every feeling is a fact, but your gut has been paying attention a lot longer than the algorithm has. It deserves at least that much credit from you. I want to leave you with something today that I wish someone had said to me a lot earlier. The fact that someone has a bigger platform than you, it does not make them right. The fact that someone is making more money than you does not make their judgment better than yours. The fact that someone is operating at a higher level, it does not mean that they see clearly. Sometimes they are just better at the outside. They're better at packaging. They're better at projecting a certain image, a certain persona. They're better at making something look like it is working, even when it is not working. And your job, your actual job, is not to be impressed by the outside. Your job is to stay honest about what you actually see, what you actually feel, what your gut is actually telling you. Trust that. I want you to trust that, not blindly, not as the only input that you have, but as a real voice at the table. Because here's what I know for sure. The $650 million company in Oprah's old building with the art collection in the Netflix deals, it was not what it looked like. And some of the things in your own life that don't look impressive from the outside are actually exactly what they are: solid. They're solid, they are real, and they're also yours. So don't trade that for something shiny just because someone with a bigger name told you to. And with that, I will see you tomorrow for the next video.